Hey guys, Samuel Lambers. I am live here with Michael and Mia from Launch Control. Today we're going to talk about refining the acquisitions process and getting from 100K to 500K. So good to see you guys. Oh, Michael, can
Yeah,
you? Okay, go
I
ahead.
can.
Make sure.
Thanks for having us on, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm just gonna briefly talk about it, and then we're gonna go through. Mia's gonna actually take you guys through what it actually looks like on the app. But I actually have some in my notes right now as far as getting from 100K to 500K. What we need to be doing, it's going after bigger deals. So we want to be going after mid to high ticket deals. You don't want to be going after deals that there's $10,000 profit there, there's $15,000 profit there. It's not really going to be helpful to getting you towards to that 500K number. You need to be doing deals that are consistently netting you 50, 60, $70,000 in profit. With that being said, that's a different profile of seller. So your response times have to be a lot lower. You need to be tracking your numbers extremely in the fact of how many contracts were sent out, how long did it take for those contracts to come back to me, how quickly did I respond to each lead that came in. Because honestly, the profile of seller that you're going to get an $80,000 or $90,000 deal from, that profile of person, they're going to be a lot more difficult to. They're going to give you one chance. They're not going to give you two or three. The person that you're getting a $10,000 deal from, they're going to give you a few chances. Whereas the person that you're getting that bigger ticket deal from, you might only get that one shot. So if you're taking a week to respond, it's going to be more difficult for you to get that deal. It's also in setting your intentions. So what is our goal for the month, right? And then week over week, we need to track that. So how many contracts are being sent out every week? How quickly are those contracts getting signed? We also need to be able to track very quickly if the contracts are not being signed within this window of time. What's the procedure for that? Okay, if I had 5 contracts go out this week and no contracts came back, what's my procedure? Well, to me, that would mean that we need to start getting these contracts signed actually over the phone. With these larger deals, when we start going after these larger deals, what happens is sellers tend to they have a million things going on. That profile of person is going to have a million things going on. And so if you send them a contract and you don't get it signed within a certain amount of time, after 24 hours, the odds of you getting that contract signed goes extremely low. So just tracking those things, right? And then we also want to track how many sellers are declining because of the price. And then if they're declining because of the price, what's their average motivation? Understanding the seller of that larger deal as well. And that's incrementally going to allow you to scale to that 500K. And so, really, the biggest thing with launch control as well is you want to make sure that you're responding as quickly as possible to everyone, and make sure that you have systems and processes in place to make sure that you're able to respond, get people on the phone, get contracts sent out, get contracts signed, so you can ultimately get more deals done. So
Yeah, Femi, it was a real eye opener when you and I were discussing this because I really thought of the 100K to 500K transition from my background, which is sales and marketing. So I thought of it in terms of how you scale up your sales and marketing process and maybe optimize your sales and marketing process a bit to start having like a quarterly gains to get to the point where you can hit that. And you came at it from a very experienced investor's perspective and really broke it down into having a foundation of kind of the, I don't want to say smaller, but like your baseline kind of deals,
mm,
and then a percentage of your deals being these big ticket deals. And these big ticket deals can be a real fast track to 500K. And that was just like one of those aha kind of moments for me when you and I talked about that. And I thought, yeah, obviously. So, what Mia's going to show us later, and we'll get into that after we've covered a little bit more in depth some of the stuff you're talking about in terms of identifying those is, launch control isn't just a system for sending out messages. It's really a way of organizing and prioritizing your approach in your business. So if you've got launch control dialed in the right way, and you know that for a set of messages that you filtered down to, you know that these are all baseline deals, and you know that you might have, as you said, you might have two or three at bats at this, and your timeline might be a little bit different. You're going in with that mental mindset of knowing exactly where those conversations are going to lead. when you get them on the phone, via text, both, right? And then when you have this other organizational structure within launch control that are these big ticket ones that have a different timeline, where you do have one at bat, and you are having a very different conversation, I'd imagine, with those sellers. You go into it with the mind frame of knowing exactly who you're talking to, so that you can just really dial in and focus. So, when launch control is optimized, it's optimized to your goal structure that you're setting, as you kind of laid out for that 1 to 5 push.
Absolutely. And for me, when I'm in launch control as well, I'm able to kind of categorize those deals as we're talking about as well. So right now, the only in one of the accounts we're in, my biggest focus is getting deals that are going to net me $200,000 or more. So I'm categorizing it in a way that's allowing me to respond quickly to those things, and then getting to the point where I'm able to get those sellers on calls, get contracts sent out, and do it that way. So in acquisitions, like I said, it doesn't make sense. It's never made sense for me to do 100 more deals. It just makes sense to do less deals that are going to be higher ticket. And if we can immediately reach those sellers in these markets that we're in, and I mean immediately by sending out a text, then it's going to put us so much further ahead. And especially not just reaching them, but also organized to the point where we can have a streamlined process to get that contract. Because also, I mean, gosh, if it takes, not to say that it's better or worse, but if it takes 2 weeks to send out that mailer, and then we're sending a text as, not even as an investor as much, just more so we're just kind of having a conversation. Hey, I'm just kind of curious if you'd be open to talking about this, right? And like a casual text message. That profile of seller is going to be way more interested in having that conversation if we're reaching out on a, kind of like even a casual basis, like almost like I just drove by it, right? What's interesting is that with this profile of seller as well, where we're getting these larger deals from, they don't really want to necessarily sell to investors because investors have a bad rep, right? And so even in my templates, what I've done is kind of change it up to the point where, like you guys were saying, sound like an investor without sounding like one, right? Like I'm here to play ball, but I'm not a flipper so much, And I think that's very important with this profile because money is not really their biggest motivating factor all the time. It's not. It's more so, well, I want to do this swiftly, and I just kind of want to get rid of this property. Whereas a lower profile seller, money is a really big motivator for them. So in knowing that, you also kind of know how to, curate your templates according to the profile of property and seller that you're going after.
So, because I don't know how this works, so I kind of want to go back a little bit to the profiling side of it, if you don't mind. It's
Mhm.
like in launch control, for instance, like for Mia and her team, when we're onboarding clients, like we take special care to get into who we're speaking to, right? So like if you come on and you go through onboarding with Mia and her team, we're having a very different conversation with you, someone who has, millions behind them in terms of REI success and land, versus someone who is a brand new student with you, or somebody who's watching this channel and just getting started. They're going to get a very different education course than you are, right? For you, the conversation is going to be about how do we optimize this for your team? How do we get you out of the weeds so you're not doing too much of this yourself? How do we make sure that we hit your goals, your profit goals for the quarter, right? Whereas if somebody's brand new, we're talking about, what do you need? Market analysis tools that we can plug you into? Do you need advice on data that we can plug you in? Do you need analysis on the market that you're interested in? Me and I were just looking at this today of like data that we have market by market to make sure that people know and the validity of the market that they're going into. So it's
Mhm.
it's a much more education focused path, right? So we have to have those profiles and know who we're talking to. But in terms of like separating those avatars of, somebody who's got a plot of land that it's worth 30 grand, and you're going to give them 18 for it or something, right?
Mhm.
Versus the seller, the avatar who's got that 150 $200,000 piece of land. How do you profile them, and how do you separate them so you know who you're talking to?
Yeah. So first of all, I need to know that there's demand in the area for that $150,000 property that you're talking about, right? So on average, if there's a $150,000 property that I'm offering on, I need to be able to sell that for anywhere from $250 to $300,000 on the market. So then I need to go into the market and see, for these specific property types, are people buying this? Where's the money going? And how long is it taking? If I go into a market and see that this $300,000 property took a year to sell, I'm not really too inclined to go into that market. Now, if I go to that market and see that this $300,000 property took 60 days to sell, well, that tells me that there's a lot of money going to this area. That tells me that there's people that are actively looking at land at this price point, at this acreage, and all I have to do is go and find it, right, and talk to that seller. So that's the first thing. I first need to know that there's demand for that property type. Now, on the acquisition side, collecting that data really comes from experience and having those conversations. So because I've pretty much talked to every profile of seller, I have itemized data on what that kind of looks like. So I know that this guy that moved out of the country and lives in England, he's going to be more inclined to sell to me because he doesn't care about the property so much as if a person's actually on the property or they live down the street, they're going to be less inclined because it means more to them, right? And so understanding, like, when you're talking to the seller, how to deal with them based upon their story, their motivation for selling the property, all those things. But it really starts with demand, because if there's no demand in the area, you don't need to have the supply, right? There has to be demand in that area first. And I have to know that people are going to come to this area with money and be willing to buy the properties in cash. I don't want my properties to be sitting, right? Because there are markets where you can go buy 200 acres and list it for a lot of money and nobody will buy it, right? If I don't have proof of concept at least 3 times, especially for properties that are those higher ticket properties, I'm not going there. I'm just not going to do it because I know that it's not going to sell. And then I also need to be able to see land specific brokers in that area that are actively working that area. So that's categorizing that.
So I'm a newbie. I'm assuming that some, at least in land, and I'm assuming that some of the people listening are as well. So in terms of, when you're looking into these markets where you hope to find these larger deals, are there some leading indicators of where to look? So just for instance, within 50 miles of a major airport, quick road access to a highway, near a national park, are there some of these things that you can look for to kind of, on a national landscape, more quickly narrow down where those might be?
So usually I'm looking on the outskirts of major cities, and I'm looking specifically for rural recreational land. So
Okay.
most of the time it's going to be hunting land, and the game consists of turkey, deer, things like that. On average, that's the kind of asset that I'm looking for. If it's not that, then it's going to be a larger residential type of property, like a property that you could put multiple homes on, or 2 homes on, but it's still recreational of sorts. So those have been some of the larger deals that we've done. Also, cattle grazing is huge too. That's huge, because these cattle companies will come in and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on the land because they're going to go run their cattle on the property, right? So I'm looking for assets like that. Those are the 3 tiers of, like, these are going to be the deals that you're going to be able to make $100,000 or more on, or deals like that.
Okay. And I don't want to get too far ahead, but this is just, I'm curious about this. You work really closely with agents, right? In terms of on the dispo side. So that must be an interesting path to find people that are well versed enough to be able to sell that land for, hunting recreation, or to find the people that are looking for cattle grazing land, that kind of thing. Like, that's not your typical buyer.
It's not. But the thing is that, so when I was talking before about demand, usually when you're looking at the demand and looking at the properties that have actually sold, the same brokers that sold those properties usually end up being the ones that you work with. And so they're already plugged in with a lot of those people in that industry. And so
Okay.
there's people that will ask them like, hey, I'm looking for this. I'm looking for this kind of property. They're already looking for it, right? And so if you're plugged in, like I said, that's why it's so important to be plugged into that land specific broker, because if you're not, and you're dealing with the person that, so I always say this: if there's a person that has a bunch of houses listed, we don't want to be going with that person. We want to go with the person that has very good land specific marketing, right? So their descriptions are really good, their drone shots are really good, their photos are good. The story that they're telling of this listing, literally vacant land, is very good. And so that's the person I want to go to, as opposed to the person that has 20 houses listed. It's not going to do us any good.
Yeah, because ultimately you're not the one that's finding these buyers, right? They are. So
Yeah,
they have to be able to have the contacts and have to do
exactly.
to do this at speed.
And the other thing too is that it's not even that we have to find them. I know they're there because the demand is in this area. So that's really the biggest thing, is like, where you're able to reverse engineer this to the point where that when I list this at this price point, I know exactly what's going to happen. And so that's how that only comes through repetition and understanding how to do this over and over again. But now it's at the point where I know exactly what's going to happen when we list this, because I was able to do the research and understand the demand of this area. As long as it's listed at a certain price point, within 90 days, we're going to turn this thing over. And that's to be conservative. So,
So when you're looking for these markets and you're trying to find that right balance
mhm.
between sort of those foundational level deals and then the bigger ticket deals, are you taking, say, like, are you doing this as separate markets where you have, one market is more rural, and that's, that the buy box there is going to be, say, profit tier under 50K, right? And then you've got, the circles that are around the bigger cities, or close to bigger cities, where it could be recreational land, and it's a whole separate market? Or are you looking to kind of put the two together and find that perfect combination of an outer ring around the city that's recreational, and then a ring further out that's more of your foundational deals, so it's more centered in your approach?
Yeah. So it's more of a minimum threshold. I would say that it is combined within those data sets, because just because these properties, I can make 80 grand on this property, there's going to be those other ones that might be singles and doubles. So I don't exclude that from the data set. So what it is a minimum threshold of, okay, on average I want to be offering, depending on what market I'm in, anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 minimum. So by that same school of thought, if I'm offering $30,000 to $40,000 minimum, then my goal is to be able to sell that for 50% more than what I'm buying it for, right? So
Yes.
then you're buying for 30 and selling for 60. That's the school of thought. And so by the same token, if I'm buying for 80, I want to be selling for 160. So I want to be pretty much priced at around that 50% level. And that's how I do it, because you're gonna have those smaller things in there. But what I really try to discount is anything that is gonna make me like 15K. 10, I don't want that. 10K. I
Okay.
don't want that. It's too small. It's not gonna be worth it, especially because a lot of these brokers that are really good, like, they're gonna charge you 10% anyways.
Hmm.
So because they're going to charge me 10%, and then you have title fees, by the time you're done with the deal, you made 5 grand. And one thing that I want people to understand is that it takes the same amount of effort to do the one that you're going to make 50 grand from as it does the one that you're going to make 5 grand from, if not more. And so when you understand that, kind of wrap your brain around it, it's like it makes no other sense than to just do these mid to high ticket deals. There's no reason for me to do the deal that's going to make me $1,000. It's a waste of time. So
Yeah, I think that's really smart. And on other sides of real estate, sometimes the teams can be quite big. And they've got 7 acquisitions people and an army of virtual assistants. And in that case, it maybe having almost a division where you take on the smaller deals still makes sense, because you can outsource some of the transaction coordination and that kind of thing. But
mhm.
in land, the vast majority of land investors that I know are one person shops, or they've got in themselves, and maybe some admin help that they're doing. So they're not necessarily running these massive teams. And when that's the case, what you're saying is brilliant, because you don't want to get bogged down and you want to be able to maximize not only your profit but your time. You know, time
Mhm.
equity means a lot. And so if you're able to get some of your time back by just simply closing bigger deals, finding and closing bigger deals, then not only are you going to get up to 500K faster, you're going to get up to 500K at with a time savings of, I don't know, 40% or something. It's going to be a lot.
Yeah. And this is something that's very attainable, like you just said, like on your own or with like one or two people. Like you don't really need a really large team to do 10 to 12 big deals a year. You don't. It's work intensive, of course. It's gonna take you some work, it's gonna take some follow-up, it's probably gonna take you getting cursed out and sending a lot of marketing. But like I said, I just make sure that on the front end when I'm doing my research, that every single research piece of research that I put in, it makes sense. Like, okay, I can go into this market and see that these four properties sold for $250,000 or more within 90 days. And I can see that consistently in this market. And I can also see that the demand in this given area is a lot more than the supply in this area. And because of that, I know that once I list this property on the market, it will sell, right? Like that's the biggest thing. You understand that first part, and then the second part of that is when I send this marketing out, I need to make sure that I can price myself at around 50%. You're gonna find the opportunity if you're consistently sending out the marketing. So if you're doing your text messages every single day, and you're tracking all of your numbers, how many conversations, how fast am I replying? Like, how is that? Like, what are the intricacies of that, right? If you're tracking that, then the leads are going to come. Now, when the leads come, you already did your back end research, so you already know that this is going to sell, right? So those are really the two key pieces of getting to that 500K plus.
Yeah, I mean everything that you're talking about is just doing really detailed prep work, having
Hmm.
systems, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a system of market analysis and making sure that the deals that you are pursuing are, in your case, 50% take or higher. But even if
Hmm.
you trended that down to like 30% or more, right?
Hmm.
Then you can eliminate some of the waste. But you can't do that as an after effect, right? You don't want to send 50,000 text messages and then go, oh, I just spent a lot of time on these deals that took the exact same amount of time as my biggest deal, like as you
Right.
said, right? So there's kind of boxes really, right? Like there's the checklist box on market analysis that you need to have really kind of set and in place. There's the checklist box on the marketing side and like how you handle follow up and the number of touch points that you have. And then I'm sure on the agent and disposition side, there's also kind of a some metrics that you want to hit. And
Absolutely.
it's I don't know, the analogy I usually give for this kind of thing is it only sounds complicated until you do it.
Hmm.
And if you're trying to teach someone to like drive manual, right? Drive stick. Like you got to press this button and then let your foot off the brake and you have to, move the gear shift and they're like, "Oh God." And then a week later they're zipping by people in traffic and dropping the bird and they've got it. It's
Right.
easy. Right, so it's
Right.
the same kind of thing. Like if you do the prep work and you get this stuff and you get the boxes really set up and you understand the why behind them, I mean, you're zipping through traffic real fast. Like it's not complicated. It's just necessary.
Exactly. This is very simple frameworks. The other thing too is like understanding that it's not going to be easy work either. So when you're actually in the trenches and doing it, it's important to have the expectations that I'm gonna have to work hard for this, but work hard as opposed to what? Like you got to kind of compare it because there's other people that do way less work and don't have any ability to make 500K in 10 years, right? And you have the ability to do that if you're able to just pretty much get in the trenches, track your numbers number by number, and just make it happen. It's not going to be
Yeah.
easy, but it is very very simple. And there's a lot more complicated ways to make a lot less money. And so that's one thing I always try to tell people because then they get into this and they're like, oh, well, I sent the contract and nothing happened, or I talked to 5 people today and they all cursed me out, or I sent the text and I'm just not getting anything yet. Well, you have to keep going. And so when you
Right.
believe that, like, okay, as long as I just continue to do this every day, track my numbers, and I'm just being extremely diligent, then 3 to 6 months from now, I could have $100,000 in cash, if not more. right? But people see the now and they see the highlight tapes, and then they're like, all right, let me send out 500 texts today. I should get 10 deals. It's not going to work that way. You gotta
Right.
you gotta do that every day for a few months, and then you're gonna get to the point where, yeah, now I've closed a few deals. So a big part of this is inherent patience and understanding
Mhm.
that, like, if especially if I'm just starting, like, you may not be very good at talking to people yet. So that's a skill you have to practice. You can't just come into this and expect, like, I'm gonna make 500K today. This is not a get rich quick scheme. It's not. We're getting wealthy over a
Yeah.
sustainable amount of time by getting better, getting our skills better, learning and implementing these things that I'm saying. So
Yeah. So it's a great point in terms of timeline, right? Because you're someone who has a proven system and you got a track record to show, exactly what it takes to earn this kind of money more, actually, right?
yeah.
And but I agree with you. Most people, a lot, not maybe not most people, but a lot of people come into the investment game um, wanting it to happen really, really fast, right? And
Mhm.
so, but the numbers that you just threw out, em from my perspective, are really fast. Like, to get to 100K in 6 months, and that's possible if you're diligent about it. I mean, that's that's quite quick, right? That's quite a lot of money. So for most people, if they're starting from zero, right, and they're going to have to really construct those boxes of learn market analysis, construct it, learn marketing, work with Mia and her team, construct it,
Mhm.
make connections with realtors or with the agents, and have that dispo side set up in that box.
Mhm.
Realistically, to go from 0 to 100 with with the expectation of a bit of a slow start,
Mhm.
what's a realistic number to get to there, and then to make that next step to 250 and 250 to 5?
I've seen students in Landverse do it in 6 months. So that's why I'm saying it's possible to
Yeah.
be done in 6 months. Um, I've actually seen students do it in less. So it's really the biggest lever that you can pull is being extremely good at talking to people and knowing who you're talking to. That's the biggest lever you can pull. Within 30 to 45 seconds of a call, you need to know exactly who you're talking to and how to deal with that person. And you only get that if you've had 1,000 conversations. So the faster you fail forward, the more money you're going to make. The more you throw yourself into having as many conversations as possible, sending a text, following up with every single message, the more money you're going to make. Because then you're going to get to the point where you're like, oh, you know what? This is not actually that hard because now I've talked to 1,000 people. Your goal when you get into this should be to talk to 500 to 1,000 people as fast as possible. If what you want is to get to $100,000 in cash or more in the next 6 to 8 months, you got to talk to as many people as possible. So a realistic timeline for someone that's in Landverse, if you're going to apply yourself every day, it is 6 months, honestly. Now to get to that 500K, again, now you're aiming for larger deals. You're tracking your KPIs a lot more. You're sending out a little bit more marketing as well. So it really it honestly depends on the person. It's hard to say. If we have the A type of person that's gonna be extremely diligent on everything they're doing, track their numbers, and just like they're a savage or just getting after it, I don't think it should take that long. I think less than 2 years is very realistic. Like maybe 18 months from like zero to that. Um, but you got to be a savage. Like I'm not saying this. That's not a normal person, right? Like it's not. If you feel like I'm a savage, I'm gonna go after this every day. I'm doing this Monday through Sunday. Then yeah, you're gonna get there. If you're a kind of guy that wants to take off Labor Day and then Christmas and then you're probably not gonna get there. To be honest. So
Yeah, but it's also
go
a question of whether you wanna get there, right? Like,
ahead.
there's plenty of people that are doing this, and if they can get to, say, 150
Mhm.
with 60% effort, and 100% effort would get them to 5, 150 is fine. That gives them the lifestyle that they want. They're in a sweet spot, they're good. Right?
Right.
So, a part of it is, like, knowing what your goal set is,
Mhm.
and just trying to achieve that, right? You don't always have to keep winning, just call it when you've hit a good spot, you know?
And that's why we call it life. I have it written right there. It's life by design. So if you
Yeah.
want to be the guy that works an hour a week and you're able to make 200 grand, great. There's no problem with that. But also just know if you want to be the guy that makes I don't know, $1 million a year and work a few hours a week, you can do that too. So it's really as how you want to design it. If you want to travel around and make a couple hundred grand a year, that's a great life. There's nothing wrong with that, you know. But if you want to build
Yeah,
and like this is again, you can design this how you want to design it, but also know that there's going to be different levels of expectation at each one of those levels, and you're going to have to be more diligent at each one of these levels as well. So it's just important to understand that it's all the levels are extremely attainable and extremely
yeah,
simple to get to, but there's different levels of work that is required to get to those levels and stay there.
for sure. So we talked quite a bit about, having like the analytics box and the marketing box and the dispo box, right? So why don't we, if you don't mind, like why don't we have Mia open up
Yeah,
Launch Control and kind of show what that looks like inside of the app, right? So this is like show them how simple it is to set up some organizational and tracking tools within the app. So to give people kind of a glimpse of when you put it into practice, it is actually quite easy to to implement.
All right, not a problem. I guess it's my turn now.
Yes, it is.
Let me start presenting my screen right here.
let me add it.
There you go. And I think that there we go. So I'll touch on some points that Femi and Michael also mentioned in terms of what what kind of advice they gave and how you can implement that into your launch control account, or more so use it more than just a system for sending messages, more so a system to support you in tracking those analytics, tracking your KPIs, how well are you doing, and so on and so forth. So the first thing before we get into like the nitty gritty of it all is the dashboard, which is like your central hub of everything that you're doing within your launch control account. Here is where you get a more simple overview of your KPIs, your prospect leads, your lead breakdown, your top 3 campaigns, your average reply time, which Femi mentioned should be pretty low. And this is what we always tell to our users as well when you're working close with your CSM is keep that average reply time down. You want to capitalize on the moment where the person has the phone in their hand, they're answering you, you want to answer them back. So these are just these simple KPIs that you can keep track of, and then you can get more in depth based off of how you build your launch control account. It's very much personalized to you, however you want to design your life and however you want to design your business to work for you as well, and based off of the type of team that you have. One of the things that we really recommend our users do is use our custom tags function. So within your launch control account, you get 4 predetermined tags, and then you can create up to 10 custom tags, which you don't really need more if you've got your business down and you know what you're doing and you know what you're reaching out for, especially right now within land. What we also tell to our users is that you should have something called primary tags and secondary tags. Now, again, the more you work with your CSM, the more personalized our strategies and our advice is going to be to you. But this is just a simple overview of what you can do. For example, when you want to add a new tag, you just click here. And let's say we can categorize it. Again, just an example, let's do 10 to 15K. And then, of course, you can pick color, whichever one you want. And you're going to save that tag within your account. Now, it's going to tell you how many prospects you have under that tag as well, which is going to be good for exporting KPIs and filtering within your inbox, which I'll show you guys in a few seconds. And then we're going to go ahead and create kind of like our, oh, let me delete one here. There we go. We're going to go ahead and create our secondary tag. Let's say to decision makers. There you go. Again, it's just going to help you personalize and further segment your campaigns. Once you've created your tags, or you can create tags further on when you're building up your business and building out your account, where you're going to implement them is within your inbox. Now, we always say like the inbox is where you're going to spend most of your time. It's your management hub. You're managing your prospects, you're answering them, you're filtering them. And we do have a lot of tools where you can filter your prospects out. This is where it goes into segmenting KPIs and really doing that personalized outreach and follow up to your prospects, which is going to help you. You don't want to send out a full campaign of just generic messages. You want to send out segmented, personalized follow up and outreach and pre qualifying to your prospects. The way you're going to do this is, you see within your account here, you have these tags which are going to be like predetermined. They're always within your account. You can always take them off. When you want to add another tag to your prospect, you just click here. You say 10 to 15K. And let's say we want to add a secondary tag, which is 2 decision makers. What's this going to do? It's going to help you that, okay, it's time to follow up with some of my leads. Let me do that. Let's put this prospect in the nurture status. And then we have these 2 tags here. When you want to send out your personalized campaigns, that's where these filters come in. So let's do status nurture right here. And let's do tags 2 decision makers and 10 to 15K. So right here, it's going to give you the total, so you know exactly how much you have, which what we recommend, I'll show you guys the export feature in a few seconds here, is to periodically export these results that you have, input them into Google Sheets or whatever kind of platform you have. It's going to give you a really good idea of your growth, of your fall, of when you need to kind of put in more effort, what you need to put more effort in. Is it warm leads? Is it nurture leads? Is it following up with 10 to 15K? Do you have a hard time with the 2 decision makers? So you know where you want to put in a lot of that effort and kind of grow your skills. This way, within the inbox, once you have all your leads within these predetermined filters or the filters that you put in, then you can go in one by one and either send your quick replies, send your pre-qualifying questions, or just simply ask them, do you want to continue the conversation over text, or do you feel more comfortable with getting on a call with one of our team members? It just opens that channel of communication a little bit more. This is within the inbox. And I'm not sure if Michael or Femi, you guys wanted to add anything, or if you have some kind of like examples that you wanted to share, but I was thinking to go over the expert feature and how all of that ties together with the campaigns as well for further segmentation.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd add is, for anybody, watching this, you can see where you can get really creative with this to hit what Femi's talking about, of knowing exactly who you're talking to. So you can have your lower tier deals, your mid tier deals, your higher tier deals, and then have those sub tags that match the profile of those types of sellers, right? So if you have a seller that is it's all land that is being used for hunting recreational leads, and that seller profile is kind of very no nonsense. They know their land really well. They've they've had other inquiries about their land over the years, and you know how to pivot that conversation. You can use that sub tag to let you know that, let's say there's 15 to 20 of these in your leads in your system. You know that for any of those that you push to a call that day, you know exactly who you're talking to. You know exactly how to handle that talk track, and you're mentally locked in to the conversation that you need to be having, instead of looking at an inbox where each one of those leads that are in there, you have to really kind of look at the details, think about who you're going to be talking to, go through the mental hoops of figuring this out. You don't have to do any of that by simply setting a prioritization structure that lets you always know exactly who you're talking to.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, off the back of that, when you're able to export these either into a CRM or an Excel file, we teach CRMs, but when you're able to export them, then you also have those tags as well. So then I can see on the average of these, deals that were supposed to net me 75K to 85K, maybe the offer is not being accepted, but this is the average reason why it's not being accepted. So wait, how do I go in and follow up with this to the point where I can really, I don't want to say exploit, but I can really utilize that motivation of the seller to see if I can get them down to the price that I need to get them down at. And you can see all of them. You can see it tagged. And when you have it like Mia's doing, 10 to 15K, 50 to 55K, that's going to be really helpful when it's time for you to, track your numbers and see, kind of work backwards and figure out where you need to go based upon your own goals. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's great input there so that they know like a little bit more of a specific on how to. Again, as I mentioned, the more you work with your CSM, the more of a personalized strategy we can give you. We want to get to know everybody's team, who does what, who's responsible for this, because that's the only way that we can give you these personalized strategies. And trust me, we have a boatload of them. So this is like dipping the toe in the little pond, yeah, if you will. But there is a lot of these strategies. Alongside what you're doing within your inbox, what's this going to help is also using the campaigns as kind of your folder management system, because you can also filter out by campaigns for just further more detailed segmentation. When you do this, when you're creating your campaigns within Launch Control, you can put the campaign name and then you assign the market and so on and so forth. But you can also have these KPIs that you're able to export, like how many messages you sent out, how many hot leads did you get from this campaign, how many of them are on drip, so you know how many of them are getting automatically followed up with, and then again, overall delivery and response and so on. The most important part about why you want to use the campaigns is like your folder management system to further segment your data, to further kind of have more insight onto your KPIs. And again, you can segment it as little as you want, because that's what's going to help you later on, like when you're analyzing how well you're doing with this marketing channel. When you click on your campaign, you have more detailed statistics. So you have your lead breakdown, you know exactly how many leads you have from that campaign, which again, they're assigned to your list. So the more segmented your lists are that you're uploading into Launch Control, the better campaign results you're going to have. You're going to know these KPIs just by looking at your campaign statistics: total responses, delivery, undelivered, delivered leads, and so on and so forth. And you're going to be able to see the prospect and the last messages. It just gives you an overview of how are these prospects responding to my messages? Do I need to further segment more? Do I need to kind of do a little bit more pre-qualifying when I'm exporting my data? A lot of these results and a lot of these segments and KPIs that are even subjective KPIs that we can help you out with and you get to view in your Launch Control account. Now, when you're setting all of that up, you have your inbox like tags set up and statuses and campaigns. This is where I wanted to go back to the export prospects feature. This is where you can get really into the nitty gritty of everything. And then again, either push your prospects directly to your CRM through Launch Control. We have a button here. You can do that. It will export all kinds of stuff and import it into your CRM. Or for somebody who doesn't have a CRM, or in that case, I mean, I know that most of the people do here, but then if you want to take a little bit more in-depth look in your KPIs, create graphs and all of that, that's where the export prospects feature come in. So you can export per campaign. And again, if you've predetermined, pre-segmented, and named your campaigns very like in a detailed way, you're going to be able to export all of that. So you select your campaigns, and then you can select your lead statuses. So let's say I want to know in the last month from my New Jersey campaign, how many hot leads did I get? And then I can also add the tag closed. So how many from this market, from this month, from this list, how many of them did I close? What was my profit from that, right? So that's where you can start exporting. You export, you can also do custom dates. You can export all of these statuses right here. And then you can also export non-response. So this is where you can get in with the follow-ups. How segmented do I want my follow-up messages to be? How segmented do I want my follow-up efforts to be? You can do that right within your Launch Control account. And then when you've exhausted all of that, you can also export them right here and then kind of take that to the next level. Those are kind of those whole baseline strategies. But again, as I mentioned, we really do get into that personalized hand-holding strategy in a way that we do a lot of learning. We do a lot of market analysis based off of a lot of factors. And that's where we come in with the fact that here's what you should do. Let's track this. Let's have weekly syncs. Let's have daily. I've had some daily syncs with some users, but it helps and it creates that ROI. And we're really happy when we see that that success. But that's the end of kind of like my baseline strategies on how you can organize your Launch Control account, keep track of your KPIs and segment, and then I'll open it to Femi and Michael in case they wanted me to show something else within the account.
I just wanted to say like that campaign view, if you want to go back to that, actually, like that campaign breakdown view, the deeper view of that, this is really, really powerful information to have. And when you set up those really segmented data sets, and you avoid the mistake that a lot of people make of, well, I'm just going to get 10,000 names, put them in, and I'll segment after I start getting responses in. Then I'll start doing my analytics, right? So what this allows you to do, if you take, Femi's coaching and mentorship here, and you really start with market analysis, and you are able to take from that, extract from that targeted data sets, what you get is the ability here in this view to see the truth of how a market is behaving, because you might go into it thinking that you've just picked an area that's going to be great for those big ticket deals that Femi's talking about, right? Like, you think you're going to be able to land your $100,000 profit deal out of this space, and it turns out that you got 6 deals that were in the lower tier of how low you wanted to go, or the mid tier of how low you wanted to go, and you go, oh, these are not the conversations that I anticipated coming out of this data set, but here's the data to back it up, right? So now it pivots your strategy within that sector of the market, and it allows you to, again, just know exactly who you're talking to and be able to extract as many deals as you possibly can out of any given data set.
A really big thing that I've seen to help tremendously is when we're importing the lists, and then that feature of actually being able to put in the landowner fields, right? So the APN, the county, that has been extremely helpful, to the point where it's like, you don't have to ask the seller, like, oh, can you provide me with the APN? It's gonna, because usually, let's say you have a mailer, you can look it up by reference number, but there are times where it may not work. But when I can see that right on the screen there, all I have to do is look it up, then I know how to price it within that 30 seconds. That was actually another thing that I was going to touch on earlier, just comping your properties a lot faster. Sometimes it takes people to do research. Like, it takes you just way too long. It takes you like 30 minutes to do your research, where it should take you 5 minutes. Like, look at 3 to 4 comps and then respond back. So that's what it should be. I know that there's some questions. I think they asked if you can integrate an AI chatbot to Launch Control.
Integrate an AI chatbot, as in like to actually answer the text messages when they come in.
I think that's what it says, but I don't even. That doesn't sound like a smart idea. It sounds like you need to have the conversations.
Yeah, well, this is, you will say this, and almost every coach mentor will say this, right? You're not, with rare exceptions, you're not closing a deal through text, and the process of talking to homeowners, to landowners, is you want them to guide the conversation, right? You want them to be able to tell you, why they want to sell, what their kind of motivation is. You want them to lead the discussion and end up at the end point that you want, right? Which is you being able to buy that property at a discount. If they feel like they are in basically what accounts to like a text version of a form fill, right? Like, how much acreage is it? What can you tell me about the land? Blah, blah, blah. And an AI chatbot is just pinging them with questions via text. Your chances of actually getting them to engage and convert, super low, right? Because
go ahead.
Yeah, if they really are proactive and they're looking to do that through like an online form or something like that, that's the accepted practice in that format. But if you just start pinging them with, AI generated questions, your drop off and opt out rate is going to go through the roof.
And they'll be able to tell that it's AI too. So if I'm able to just think of yourself always think of yourself as the consumer or as the seller. If you're talking to something and it's AI, what are the chances of you to continue to engage in that when you're talking about an asset that's, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars? Why am I talking to an AI chatbot about an asset that I could sell for $200,000 when I could talk to a person? The thing about land and real estate, it will always be personable. So like all this stuff of like AI replacing everything, the deals always happen with people talking to each other, just how anyone talks to one another, right? You have to have that human personable connection in order to get a deal done. And that will never, so like I even see like people doing the AI calls. that's only gonna last you so long. You have to have a personable connection with the person in order to get a deal done. You just do. Like it will never not be that for as long as time goes on. You're always gonna have to have that person to person connection and rapport and trust in order to get a deal done. Always. So I
Speaking
just
of that, though, that is where you can actually use AI tools. They're
Mhm.
not integrated into launch control, or at least not at this point. But if you are investing remotely, you're looking into some of these big ticket deals that you're talking about that are like outside of a major city,
Yeah.
and you want to prompt AI to tell you like what type of land in that area is being used for cattle grazing. If I'm
Mhm.
talking to somebody who's potentially selling land for cattle grazing purposes or knows that business, what are some of the things that I should bring up, or what are some of the talking points that I should use so that I sound educated? Or you can write these simple prompts to very quickly learn what what you need to say to connect with somebody that has hunting land, that has land that is used for cattle grazing. Most people aren't going to know that, right? So if you use it to gain personalization, it will work. If you use it to increase volume, it won't.
Agreed.
I can't.
Very good.
I can look. I can try to load the page. I don't know if there are any other questions. I'm just seeing Mia's screen at the moment.
There was one thing I wanted to touch base on that Femi mentioned in terms of the um, land details in the inbox. That is a really good thing because one thing we also say is like sometimes when you send a message out to somebody, they won't even respond. They might just call you and you have a call forwarding number, right? And
Yeah.
what the good thing is about this is you also have these like features here that you can, look at Google Maps and take a look at what it looks like if you've never been there. And then you have the land details. You have everything in front of you. It just gives that more personalized feel where it's like, hey, thanks for calling. Let me pull up your account. No, it's I have everything. Let's talk now. Which I think that it gives that really good impression that you don't only want to close the deal, but you care. This is their property, right? This is something that you want to talk about with them, and it really adds to that personable feel. And I really like those land details as well. And it was really exciting when we added.
Along those same lines too, Mia, is I've found that when we get a call back on sending a text out, um, and they didn't opt in yet, it's best practice to just text them from the number that they're calling us on, because we can't text them because they haven't opted in. So I've had that as a bottleneck with some students. They're like, well, what do I do? Well, call them back. If they don't answer, leave a voicemail and then send a text from the number that you have too, because that's been something that people are struggling with. Is like, well, I can't text them back on the launch control number. Um, so figuring out how to get around like little bottlenecks like that too, just because they didn't opt in. And I think some people know that if they text, they'll opt in. That's what I'm guessing, which is why they just call. Um, but just having that as a best practice as well.
Of course. And in that case, I mean, sometimes we do tell users it's like, yes, that is something that's going to happen, and it is normal. I mean, people have to understand that it is normal for you to have multiple numbers within a company, right? It's not
Yeah.
going to be just one number. So if let's say they call you on that launch control phone number and you answer, and then you want to text them back from your phone, that's okay. I mean, it's not something that's bad. You use launch control to get through to that prospect and they're interested. However, you choose to take that process after, that's something that we also like to know so that we can give you that strategy, but it's also good for you because again the end point there is for you to close that deal. How you do it is what we're here to help you. One thing that we do recommend though that you do in any of those accounts is just keep note of that. You have the notes function here and just say like answered on another phone or already in that process or add a tag, push to CRM. You have all those features that you can use that so that it's not like, hey, I filtered it out, I'm going to follow up with this person and then they tell me, oh, I'm already in contact with so and so, right? You want to
Mhm.
keep that like consistent communication and show that professionalism where it's like I actually care that I'm talking to you. So although they don't answer back because what you mentioned, they might not want to opt in, the point is to get to that conversation, get talking to them. So whichever way that is, it's all good. Just keep that within your account so that you know, or we know. Like sometimes I go into a strategy call and I'm like, what happened with that prospect? And then they have to go through all of these CRMs to find that out. But when we have these detailed notes, we know everything and we can create really, really quick personalized strategies with that. So just keep everything documented.
That's best practices and what I'm talking about too, and like not taking the low hanging fruit, because what an average person might do is come in here and start sending out text messages and just waiting for a yes. Like, I'm just waiting for a yes, and as opposed to actually working every single lead that comes through the funnel extremely hard, even if they say no or whatever it might be, and taking notes based upon that. That's what's gonna. We want to talk about what's gonna get us from 100K to 500K. That's what takes you there. Because a lot of people, like I said, you'll just take the yes, or you'll take the one like, yeah, sure, I'll play ball, I'll play ball, but you're not going to take those other 10 people that you're just going to have a few more conversations with, right? You might have to follow up a few more times, and taking these notes and adding these tags and doing all those things are going to be integral to you getting to that level. So,
yeah, it's launch control. Anything in real estate that is active marketing, there's a certain amount of outbound that needs to happen, a certain amount of direct mail pieces that need to be sent out, text messages that need to be sent out, etc. But that's not the success marker, right? That's just the filtering system. And once you start getting responses that come in, that's where the real estate investment game begins, right? So launch control really is aimed at how many people we can put into the inbox, not how many messages that we can send out. So when you have your daily process, if you've got somebody who sends 5 batches a day and just sits around waiting for a yes, versus somebody that sends 2 batches but looks at each one of those inbound responses as potential and works that potential, the person doing less is going to make more every single time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Mia, thanks for doing the demo. I appreciate it. That was great.
Anytime.
Yeah,
I love doing the CSM stuff. Let me stop sharing. Unless you guys wanted to go over anything else, I'll stop sharing the screen.
Yeah, that was fine.
All right.
Awesome. Well, if there's anything else you guys wanted to cover, I'm happy to. But yeah, if you guys have any questions in the chat, you guys can ask questions in the chat. I guess leave it open for like 30 seconds. But yeah, that's our summary for today.
Yeah, 100K to 500K.
Yeah, and we'll be doing some more live streams in the coming weeks on just how deals are progressing in our CR, in our accounts as well. Like I said, I just started blasting out a pretty big campaign aimed at like these higher ticket deals, just so I can show you guys the power of coupling some pretty deep market research with launch control as well. So excited to show that as well.
Perfect. Looking forward to it. All right. Well, thanks to you both.
Absolutely. Well, looking forward to the next stream, and yeah, that was awesome. So I'm definitely gonna have to go back and rewatch this.
Awesome.
Oh, there's a question right here. It says, how much of an issue is only having 1 or 2 phone numbers markets on launch control when you're marketing to multiple counties?
Well, I guess it just depends on your marketing strategy, but within launch control, you can expand out and have or expand up and be able to hit different markets. But really, it's just about taking some of what Femi teaches, applying it to a specific market, and if you're earning enough out of that, if in a 90-day period you extracted 100K out of that market, then you've got the marketing budget and the plan to scale that to other markets, and launch control will enable that for you. But my suggestion would use each market as a litmus test for scaling up.
Cleophas, what's your question? And then in the link below, if you guys want to sign up for launch control, the link is in the description below. If you guys want to start, scale, or build your life living business in 2025 and beyond, the link to book a call with us is also below. So both of those links are below. Cleophas will wait a little bit for your question. If I don't get it in like the next 30 seconds, I'm going to end the stream. We've all got things to do. Okay. There you go. Okay, no. Is there a way to follow up before 30 days? I think he's talking about a drip, this person.
No, this is is there a way to follow up before 30 days after you've sent one initial message and have not gotten a response yet? This is a safety check for the entire ecosystem to make sure that we aren't overhitting people. And again, it's if you send out 1,000 messages and 200 people reply, it's that 200 that you really want to focus on. When you send out those secondary messages, whether you've done it 10 days after, 15 days after, or 30 days after, it is diminishing returns. You might get an extra 2% to come in on the second one, maybe an extra 1% to come in on the third, but it's most of your money, 98% of your money is going to come from those initial responses.
Gotcha. Then Cleophas said, I'm a 19-year-old wholesaler who just closed my first land deal. How would you suggest to scale my business? You can book a call directly with me and I'll help you out. I don't know your exact situation, so we can strategize on that call. And then Masood said, how launch control consider it's a duplicate when we import new lists. That's what he said.
Yeah, so duplicates are scrubbed. Yeah, duplicates are scrubbed on a phone number level. That's also, again, as Michael mentioned, for that safety of the ecosystem as well. And again, you want to focus on the ones that answer you. That's what you should focus on, sending out those messages as well. But yeah, duplicates are scrubbed on a phone number level.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you for that. We will end it there then, and we'll see you guys on the next stream. Thank you guys for watching.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mia. Thanks, Michael. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.